Story time. So I gotta learn my lesson about using these apps. So I was chatting on these apps again and met up with someone. We were talking, consistently having great conversation for about a week. And then we finally met and we hung out twice and then they disappeared. And I said, okay, that's fine. They wanted more romantic than friendship. Totally understand. Met another person, totally lustful. I knew that they didn't want anything more than my body. And turns out that's all they wanted. And I had to cut that connection off very quickly. I was like, I'm not interested in you romantically. I was seeking friendship, you were not. This isn't gonna work. No judgment to others, but when I start seeing people fall into patterns, my discernment is just crazy, ridiculously on point. And even though triggers are not supposed to be about you shutting down and shutting off and cutting everybody off, there are situations where you have to know that this energy is not for me. This energy is not on the same wavelength, and so it's best to just separate myself from it. What this eclipse has been teaching me is that my discernment and judgment have always been on point. I just have to respect and listen to myself. It's a constant battle between my ego, my flesh, this life that I've already experienced, and my soul, the one who knows, has been here, has done that, but also has cycles of completion that it needs to continue through this body and vessel. Again, remember, when we talk about closing out timelines and doing shadow work and saying that we did the work for our ancestors, there are ancestors who literally, something that you just laugh off, they murdered somebody over, right? There are people out there who literally abandon whole families over the smallest inconvenience of their emotions. Not saying that their emotions at that moment didn't matter and that they weren't large and that that wasn't something they were going through, but it definitely is healing when you know that something your family member who's incarcerated for, they were unable to have that understanding of this isn't that serious. And you were able to walk through a situation that they couldn't. That is healing generations. Again, I'm not judging anyone who has ended up in a situation that they did not want to be in or meant to be in, but there is a level of, again, knowing that practicing discernment literally means trusting your gut intuition, trusting what you've already known to do correctly, and putting the daily practice in to understand how to walk through the fire. When I tell you that I've already known that using social media as a way to make friends it works, but it also is a double-edged sword because people can manufacture personalities. They can manufacture the truth. A few of the people that I met, they totally lied about age and life and stuff, and I'm just kind of like, that's weird. And their example is, well, you know, there's a lot of weirdos on here, and I'm like, well, you just made yourself a weirdo by lying. Because I always put the truth. I say exactly how old I am, who I am, what I'm about, what I'm looking for. And then people think that I'm being fake. They're like, this can't be real. Isn't it crazy that we live in a world where people are so conditioned to the lies being the truth versus the truth being the truth? So you telling the truth, I use real pictures, I use my everything, and people are like, oh, you must be a robot. This can't be real. You must be a bot. And it's like, I'm so tired. I'm just tired. I don't know how to put it any other way. Like, I don't want people to ever feel discouraged, but all of us, no matter what place of this journey we put ourselves in, I consider myself to be a leader in the spiritual realm. I feel that I'm a leader in my physical realm. But just like all things that we talk about as leaders, people are not going to like that you have an answer to something that they have been fighting their entire lives to answer. People are not going to like that you can bypass things that don't seem to bother you, but it bothers them to the very core of their soul. So learning how to walk through the fire, as we say, is not something that is easy, even though it comes easy to some of us who don't think about it, because again, we've done the work. When we talk about eclipse season and things that, again, we don't really get to see, but we feel, it's awesome to understand that everything that's integrated in the human consciousness is a tool. it's also a weapon, depending on how you yield it. So for me, there's a part of me that yearns for community, yearns for connection, yearns for relationships. And there's a part of me that I literally disconnect, disengage, and I don't want anything to do with anybody. So when they talk about the devil and the angel, that's what I'm facing a lot of times, where it's like, I want community, but I don't want to talk to people. I want a tribe, but I don't really keep up with people. And I understand that's my own baggage to handle and carry and sort through. But it's at the same time where it's like, why was it so much easier when we were younger? I don't get it. Like I said, I'm 40 now. That's not very old, but it's also not very young. And so for me, just the relationships I used to integrate into my life were probably a little bit more shallow and fickle. Like, we were friends based on how we dressed. We were friends based on how we looked. And because we enjoyed doing the same side hobbies, which was usually going out and drinking and stuff, we said we were friends. But then as I got older, I realized a lot of these people, they were not consistent in my life. They didn't stick around because they knew our relationship mattered. They stuck around because they were bored. And then as soon as they were able to get their home, their family, their kids, they disappeared. And that was the part of friendship where I was like, oh, these were never real friends. I was just a space holder until they got what they wanted. That's what I think a lot of us are trying to explain to people, that someone said once to me, people aren't disposable. And I was like, that's true. But yet they treated everyone around them like they were disposable. They gossiped, they talked about their life, they talked about them, they put them down, and then they would go and get on the phone and gather more information and laugh about it. And I was like, that is not the type of friendships I want. That's not the type of people that I want in my energy field. And so I had to start learning that I had to grow out of that space. And it's not fun, it's not easy. It is really hard to recognize a part of your life as, I'm not supposed to be in this person's energy. This person is not supposed to be in my life. They are here to teach me something. And that is the part that I respect. That is the part that I listen to. But it's also the part that is really hard to learn how to keep going through life, knowing that if you are on a spiritual journey and you're choosing to be on a spiritual journey willingly, that you're going to have to understand that everything's not going to always make sense the way you need it to or want it to. So even if I met someone who was rude to me and instantly I was like, no, thank you. And I met someone who was very open and communicative, but then they disappeared. And then I met someone who was literally lust-based and didn't want anything to know about me. They just wanted the convenience of hooking up. These were all lessons for me. I'm not saying that I couldn't take the time and try to give these people the opportunity to be who they truly want to be, but it's also a part of my journey where I can't sit and wait for people to grow either. Like, I have space for people to grow within the space that I hold for myself, but I don't have space for people to just sit there and take up space. Does that make sense? Like, there are people who are willing to just sit in your space and take up space, but they're not growing, they're not sharing, they're not giving, they're not yielding anything other than taking up space. And so I have to learn that I know that no one's perfect. I don't think I'm perfect by any means. Trust and believe me. I know people who have met me who think I am, or they think that I think that way, but it's genuinely just I show up with my heart open, and I'm genuinely hoping that that's what you do. But most people, I realize, don't do that. They show up with their stipulations, they show up with their checklists, they show up with their fears and their insecurities, and then they expect you to waddle through them and go through this obstacle course of trying to fit into their life, and that's not fair. That's the part of the journey that I've learned where life isn't fair, as far as knowing that you can't expect people to want to grow with you if they are not willing to grow for themselves. Now, do I expect every friendship to be perfect and the people around me to be perfect? No, but I do expect you to love yourself enough to know that when you're hurting yourself, you don't lash out and hurt others. And so the thing that about the apps that I've learned is a lot of people are just lost, hurt souls. Genuinely. That's why so many of us, when we talk about I see people idolize and they say the good old days where we didn't have cell phones and we had to talk to people and other. Yes, there's a sense of you're forced to learn people, but you're also forced to do it the long way where they can lie for years and you never know that person's heart. Online, they can lie too, but it's a little bit more transparent because you can see the image they curated, and then when you meet them in person, you can see that this is not the same energy that I was talking to online. And so it's much easier for us to spot the phonies. And that's where I think a lot of people are starting to fall apart when it comes to this new age of technology, is because it's easy to spot the fake people quickly. And it's a very lonely world when you see that you're only doing this for the views, for the image, for the likes, for the whatever. And then you meet this person in person, or you're hanging out with these people in public, and they're not kind people. I don't need you to be nice. Again, niceties is okay when you're trying to be fake and cordial and just going with societal rules. That is what it is. But kind is actually understanding that everyone's not going to see your vision. They're not going to understand your journey. They're not going to know your backstory. So it's for you to share. It's not about forcing people, again, to run through an obstacle course of your pain and fear, and then if they don't pass, then they gotta go. That's not fair. And I've learned that for myself. I definitely have done that. I'm definitely guilty of thinking like, well, if I can get through it, why can't they get through it? And so that is not the right way to face your energy. You have to really understand that when we talk about people who trigger you, people are going to trigger parts of you when trigger doesn't mean anger. Trigger can literally mean triggering loneliness. Like, why do I feel lonely? Because you're investing in empty vessels. You have to know how to invest in energy that is actually finding ways to fill itself up, so that when you come into the room, they're willing to pour into you and you can pour into them. And that's where you get these beautiful connections where you're overflowing together and you're actually building together. Again, we have to remember the flesh has its own thought path. The soul has its own thought path. So even if the flesh is supportive and loving and kind, the soul might get triggered from a past life remembrance and be like, oh, I remember where I had that, and now I don't have that. Why does this person have that? And it starts to eat and fester at you, and you have to allow that energy to work through you so that you don't continue to make the same mistakes. Again, mistakes are not something that you should be condemned for. It's just a part of learning. But when you recognize that, I'm starting to feel bitterness because I'm insecure about where I am in life, that's going to then allow you to see why you're calling certain people in, because then you can say, maybe I can ask them questions and they can help build with me. That's the hope for the connections that I try to find and try to meet. It doesn't mean it's always going to work out that way. And so I've had to learn how to accept that on this particular journey of spirituality, I might be alone for a long time. I might not have the friends and the romantic partner that I think I deserve. Maybe I'm meant to just be this bleeding heart artist who shares what they're going through for other people to heal. When we talk about martyrs for the cause, some of us are literally martyrs to our stories. And for me, I don't want to die for wanting to be seen. I don't think that that is healthy, right? I know some people feel that you should fight to the death for some things, and there are some situations that calls for that. But as far as doing your own healing work, I'm not going to go into every situation thinking that I need to keep sacrificing myself in order to be the better person. It gets exhausting. It's very lonely, I promise you. It's not something that I want to do or love to do, and I always ask the universe all the time, why me? Why was I chosen to do this? And then I think about it. I literally can go through something that is the most painful situation that most people, it would take them months to get through. And for me, it literally takes me days or hours. And I don't know how I'm able to do it. And sometimes I question, am I normal? Like, why am I able to walk through this energy in a matter of hours, and it takes people years to get through it? And so that's when I realized, like, my alchemy is insane. Like, I literally can talk myself through any situation and come out on the other end bright, shiny, and new. But guess what? when you come out bright, shiny, and new on the other end, a lot of times you look around and find out you're by yourself. There's people who are still in the muck of it, still in the mud, and there's nothing that you can really do to go pull them out. You can try to pull them out, but guess what? You're gonna get dirty and muddy again, and then you're gonna have to do all your work all over again. That's the part of being a martyr, that you might get taken out trying to go back and save everyone. And they say that you can't save everybody. It's not your job. It's not what you're built for. And so, me, myself, and I had to learn that the friends and the family and the romance that I require is going to look very different from what other people want. I'm a very simple person. So for me, I like simple pleasures. I like simple connections. And I understand that in order for me to really pay attention to who comes into my life, I have to be willing to sacrifice my ego sometimes, because I do expect people to show up correctly. And I know that they won't always show up correctly, but I also know that I don't have the capacity, and I realize that it's a hard place to be, where you like helping people, but you can't always hold space for people. It's contradictory, but I understand that I am like a train. My train is going to keep going regardless if you board it or not. Now, if you board it and you come along for the journey, the tracks will take us to the destination. All you have to do is go for the ride and do the work. But a lot of people, they also want to be the commander-in-chief. They want to get up here and direct my train and run my train. And I'm like, no, you have to do your own train. That's where you go to your own school and learn how to be an engineer, a captain of your spiritual journey. So what I'm trying to say through all this roundabout long talk is, I had an intimate moment where I was just thinking about how I miss my dad. I never got to meet him. I never got to know him. But there's a sense of me that misses his energy, where I know that there's a part of me that's completing a journey that he didn't get to fulfill. When he left my mom when we were younger, it was not the best of situations, right? There was a lot that he was going through, and I can see it from his perspective, but at the same time, as a child, I feel a sadness where it's like you couldn't just stick it through, you couldn't figure it out. And sometimes they can. A lot of the times it really is about them being able to say, I have to go do this work on my own. And I might not get to fulfill it in this journey with you, but hopefully you'll get that part of yourself that gets to fulfill it in your life and your journey. And so for me right now, I am the only of my brothers who don't have kids, don't have a partner, I don't have a home. I'm working on it, but I rent, I travel, I do what I want to do. But for them, they look at me like, oh, I wish I could do that. I love that you can just live this free life. So it's always a double-edged sword of everyone's going to look at your life and think the best of what you have, not knowing what you're going through. And so for me, it's funny because it's like, I want to learn how to stop feeling like I'm lonely. And it's hard because it's not easy to do. Like even when I'm with people, I feel lonely. Even when I do make friends, I still feel lonely. I don't know where that comes from, and I don't really know what it is. Some people call it depression and other things. I feel that it's literally the soul yearning for a life it used to have. And the human body, it just is going with the flow because it doesn't know. So this eclipse for me has been a revealing aspect of energy cleansing and just allowing myself to go with the flow, as far as I really don't care anymore. I know that sounds self-defeating, but I don't mean it as I'm gonna give up, on what I'm doing. I know my vision and my story needs to be told, but there is a part of me that's kind of like, I fold. I don't want to keep trying to make friends. I don't want to keep trying to be open to romantic partners. I don't want to keep trying anything, because the things that I've done have just always blown up in the end. And so I've learned to just step back. I love astrology. I love things like human design and all that. They give me great answers to myself. Like as a projector, I'm meant to, wait for the invitation. I can initiate things, but wait for the invitation means allow something to see you for who you are and allow them into your space accordingly. Don't just try to force yourself in. So that's really hard for me, because I understand that I see energy a certain way that other people don't, and I want it to flourish. I want it to work, but that's not always going to be the case. So If anything that I've learned, again, that I want people to remember, you're not alone in this journey of being alone. You know, it's not one that's easy to understand because you have to literally put your pride aside and say, what am I doing that I'm not allowing energy in to see me for me? But also, you have to know that I'm doing everything I can do because that's part of my journey to be this person. So don't feel bad for not having an answer. Even if it seems like everyone around you has the answer, they don't. Most of it's manufactured and made up. And so I don't really have a conclusion to any of this stuff I'm talking about. I just felt I wanted to talk about it today because, you know, I have an extreme sense of loneliness that I don't know how to close. You know, people talk about your sacral and your third eye and all this, and you know, I put on my red and make sure that I'm opening up my sacral energy, and I work out and do my exercises and go out into nature and I pray and meditate and do all the things they say to do. But there's still that side of me that's kind of like, what more do I need to do? Like, what more can I say that I haven't already said? And so this isn't to discourage people from the journey. It's just to remember that it's okay to think this. Like, you're not a bad person for thinking this way. You're not gonna have every answer, as I said before. So allowing your body to just feel this without falling apart, without giving up on yourself. What I mean by that is still take showers, still eat, still get out of the house, do what you gotta do. But be patient. Be patient with yourself, be patient with the energy. The things that are meant for you will come to you naturally. And constantly chasing and seeking really is a thing where it's a distraction. And so I pray that you all find a way to make it to your final destination without getting distracted, without feeling lonely to the point that you give up and you get off at the next stop and you never look back. Because sometimes that's how I feel. Like, I just want to just get off this train and just never look back. But there's going to be a part of me that's like, we've been sitting long enough, get back on that train. So I think it's a healthy balance of taking a break and coming back, and you know, when you need to, go as hard as you want to, and then step back and do nothing. There's no real answer to any of this. It's just being honest with self. So, you know, my story right now has been love and loneliness and community, because it's funny, I want community, but I don't really like being around a lot of people. I want friends, but I also don't have the capacity sometimes to hold space for someone who doesn't hold space for themselves. So it really is a double-edged sword of me not trying to control it, but also me protecting myself. And I know that I'm a huge overprotector when it comes to my energy. Like, it's a fortress. To get into my field is not easy, and I know that. And so I want to learn how to stop feeling bad for knowing that's a part of me, because sometimes I do feel bad. Like, why can't I just be more open? Like, I used to use alcohol and stuff to be more open, which is what people got a false persona of me. And then when I was sober, they'd be like, you're totally not the same person. Like, you're so much more closed off. When you're buzzed, you're more open, you're more playful, you're more honest. And it's like, I took that to heart and I took it the wrong way. And I would just say, well, fine, let people get the drunk me. Let people get the messy me, the fun me. But I'm fun. I'm fun. I'm a blast sober, okay? And I had to learn who that person was myself, because it would get to the point where I would get so bored with myself that I would need a distraction. And that's where people have to remember, that's where addictions come in. That's where habits that we don't want to become habitual to come in. And so learning who I am with myself and loving myself. I love myself fully. I am fully integrated. My human knows who they are and what they're here for. My soul knows who they are and what they're here for. Do we always understand that our patience needs to be a little better? Maybe not always, but it doesn't mean that we're not willing to continue the journey. So don't give up. If anything, this message is just about encouragement. Don't give up on yourself. Just keep showing up. Just keep being present. Again, if it doesn't happen for me on this realm of life and consciousness, it will happen for me after I leave here, because it really is a soul journey. I know a lot of times we think about the legacy of the human, but when we leave this earth, it's a spiritual journey from there. We know the spirit is energy and it's all around us at all times. So my heart is healed, completely healed. Do I still have parts of the journey that trigger my heart? Absolutely. There's no getting around that. But it doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path. It doesn't mean that you're not doing the correct work. It just means you have to practice a little more gratitude and patience. And I don't mean gratitude for the things that don't feel good. I mean gratitude for you just being a human. It's okay to not know, and it's okay to not be okay. Because one day you're gonna be okay. You're gonna look back and laugh and be like, wow, I can't believe I ever cared. Or I can't believe I ever doubted. So, anywho, I hope this makes sense. Just know I love you. Keep fighting the good fight. Stay on your healing path if that's the path you're on. Stay on your spiritual journey if that's the journey you're on. Just remember that it doesn't have to be lonely. Just put yourself out there and know that the right people will be called in by your light. The right energy will be attracted to you, and your time will come. As always, I love you guys. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, follow me on my other stuff. I appreciate you.